Ready?
No.
Live from the church basement, it's the Northwoods Assembly Bible Study with PB&G, where if you miss a little, you miss a lot. Around here, we pack 10 pounds of Bible study in a 9-pound bag, don't we, Gary?
If Bible study is, well, yes.
Yeah,
that. What
Okay.
he said.
Yeah. All right. As always, if you have any questions or anything, type them in the comment section. We'll take a look at them. Gary answers the hard questions, and I skate by with the easy ones. That's how it works around here. We are in the book of Ezra, so if you want to turn there and get ready, Gary will open us in prayer.
I know you're thinking, finally, they're doing Ezra.
Finally. Man, I've just been looking for a church that would do the book of Ezra.
Right?
And I was hoping we could find a church that would spend an entire year going through the book of Joshua.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, hey, this is the place.
All right.
4 parts.
All right.
Okay.
Let's pray. God, tonight, just let your spirit move here as we open your word. Let us just hear from you. God, see your hand working with your people. Just see faith at work and learn from that, God, just to be motivated in the world we live in. You know, that we have our struggles, we have the things that we face and things that make it a little more difficult to be yours, to be vocal, to be Christians. But that's not new, God. That's something that has been around since you've been around, which is forever. God, just help us to see that and understand that it's not ever going to change. It's not ever going to be easy. God, it's within us to be stronger. Just help us to see that, learn from your people, learn from the things that have happened, and just learn to glorify you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Better stop praying at some point so we can do Bible study. Otherwise, we have to close right away. So
We have time. We have time. All right. Book of Ezra. I'm not exactly sure where in Ezra.
You know, if it is a 4-part series in the book of Joshua, if each part is a quarter, I mean,
Right.
That makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, sections. So like this is chapter 1 in, and then we get to a new section.
Yeah.
Book 3, would be fall.
Part
So,
1, sermon 22.
exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I'm just seriously
Now that we're
considering.
figuring out how to archive it,
All right.
get it all figured out. That's, by the way, I learned that's where Noah stowed the bees. Did you know that?
In the archive?
Yeah.
But I'm bumped. Hey.
I didn't know that before.
Okay, yeah, we're in chapter 5, verse 1, I think.
Yeah, we did start a little bit in chapter 5. We'll just start on 1 again and go from
Why don't you kind of, those who might be joining for the first time, kind of give a brief last episode.
Well, in the beginning,
Not that far back.
This is the Israelites, well, actually the Jews coming back from Babylon. After the captivity, they're coming back to Jerusalem. The king told them, hey, go ahead and build a temple, and then they face some adversity, and the people around them, another king came in and they said, hey, they can't let him build this temple. So he made them stop. And now we're going to see another king comes in and says to him, okay, build the temple again. So now they're back to work on their temple, building it back in Jerusalem. And they've been gone for 70 years. And, surprise, surprise, the 70 years that they were gone, it didn't just sit empty and everything was shined up, ready, waiting for them. But other people moved in. So they're facing some opposition when they come back. So they, it's, we were talking beforehand, there's some parallels there between when they came back from Egypt to get their promised land. And now when they're coming back to that promised land from their captivity, that ground that they lost, they have to battle for all over again.
Right. And the reason why we decided, well, there's, more than one reason why we decided to do the book of Ezra. The primary reason is because if we didn't, Gary was going to cry.
I wasn't going to cry. I could have picked another, major book in the Old Testament.
But a lot of people just don't read these books or skim over them or say, well, it's nothing interesting in there. There's nothing of value in that. And one of the points of us doing this is to show that this stuff runs parallel with what's happening in our world. People haven't changed.
Mhm.
People are as broken as they ever were, doing the same stupid stuff, just a different day. And so looking through Ezra helps us to understand a lot of the parallels that run through our own lives are reflected here. And I think it's just important to address those things and see that Christ is revealed all over the place in places you wouldn't even think to look.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing, in Nehemiah and then in Ezra too, that struck me. That what drew me to these for Bible study to begin with, it was that relation between what's happening there and what's happening here. One, we talked about this last week, the fact that they were given their promised land, they came in and more or less took it, and then they were disobedient, and they got kicked out. And when they came back, they had to more or less take it again. For us, when you just sit back, you do things and maybe you lose a little ground and you think, well, I'm not hurting anybody but me. It's when you finally, come to your senses and you come back and you try to regain what you had before, you find you lost all that ground. All that didn't just sit empty, but now you got to battle for it all over again, and that's what they're finding here is kind of the same thing. And they're facing this opposition. It's hard to be a Jew here because the people around them don't like it. They don't want them to see them succeed. So when they push back and they got them to stop building a temple, we find if we look in Haggai's prophecy, he really gets after them because, well, they stopped building the temple, but they built their own stuff. They're building a fortune for themselves, and now they're ignoring the temple. And that's kind of the state of a lot of the Big C church today is we're building ourselves a fortune.
Right.
Getting ourselves comfortable here.
Yep. In God's name, but he doesn't seem to be present in those transactions.
Right.
Only in name.
And that's why Haggai told him in his prophecies, you can make money, but it'll never be enough.
Right.
You're going to put food away, but it'll never have enough until you face God and do what he's told you to do.
And that's kind of the story of why Jesus had to come and give us salvation, is because no matter what we can do, it's never going to be enough. The only thing that can ever fill and satisfy is going to be Jesus. It's going to be that salvation that he offers us.
Right.
But yeah, we look around at the landscape of our lives, a lot of people, and wonder why things are such a wreck, or, even people in the church, why God would you do that? Why did you let that happen? And, Ezra is an example of, I didn't do that. You did that. I gave you the promised land. I gave you victory. I gave you everything. I saved you from bondage, set you free, performed miracles, walked you into this land occupied by warriors and giants, and it's all yours now. And here you sit again, coming out of captivity from Babylon, trying to move back into a land that was supposed to be yours in the first place. And you squandered it, you wasted it, you gave it away, you did not occupy it, you forgot about me, you started acting just like the people we kicked out in the first place. So here we go, round two.
Yeah.
And people, and I don't want to sound insensitive, I want people to get it. And I think you do too. And that means we have to look in a mirror sometimes and maybe see some things that we knew were there, but we pretend aren't. We gloss over and we put makeup on that face so it looks better than it is, metaphorically.
Yeah.
And we need to clean our house and we need to get back to God. And that's kind of what's happening here in Ezra, is they're rediscovering the relationship with their God. And you'd made the comments about the church. That's something I think is really important, because so much of the church, sadly, has lost relationship with the God they supposedly worship.
Yeah. When Ezra comes in a little bit later, you see he kind of brings revival with him. He's that itinerant preacher that brings revival kind of a guy, And you see that it happens because then the people they recognize their shortcomings. Then they're drawn to God, and that's for the church. We're not going to just God revival in our land. And it's like, well, let's have revival in the church first, so that we can, because I think that's where we're falling short.
Yep.
There's too many people in the church. I mean, even not just, we tend to say the church and that part of the church and that part of the church because they fall short, but we're good. It's like, no, here too. In this chair too. I'm never going to sit here and say stuff and not think it doesn't apply to me. We're so caught up in our day to day and making our fortune and doing what we're doing that, God's stuff just kind of takes a back seat. And revival happens when that gets put in the front seat.
Yep.
And that's what happens as we go on in Ezra.
Yeah. Yeah, that goes along with the words of the great theologian and philosopher Carrie Underwood when she said, "Jesus, take the wheel," right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was Cletus, take the reel.
That's Tim Hawkins.
Oh, that's Tim Hawkins. That's right.
Which is pretty funny. All right. I would love for you to just read as much of chapter 5 as you would like, Gary.
Okay. When the prophets. Okay, your turn.
No.
You said. All right. Chapter 5, verse 1. When the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, son of Iddo, prophesied to the Jews who were in Judah and Jerusalem, in the name of the God of Israel who was over them, then Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, son of Jozadak, arose and began to rebuild the house of God, which is in Jerusalem, and the prophets of God were with them, supporting them. And we talked a little bit about that last week. I read some of that prophecy of Haggai and Zechariah. They were contemporaries. They were there, and God has given them messages. And Haggai was pretty scalding with his message to the people there and saying, hey, get off your butt and build the temple.
Yeah, they come back to the land that they had occupied, and they start to build the temple. And then construction ceases for over 2 years or into the second year. Verse 24 of chapter 4, thus the work of the house of God in Jerusalem came to a standstill until the second year.
Second year
of
Darius.
Darius. So it could have been even longer than that.
Yeah,
15 years?
It was, it was
like 15 years.
Yeah, it was quite a while.
So, so they came with this great, we're going to do this great thing. And then it kind of got a little hard and they got distracted. And, look at that shiny thing over there. And scripture talks about how they just started to build lives for themselves, and they settled in and they were doing fine. And, they got enough for a new flat screen and the pickup, and they got the internet hooked up. So they had Netflix and the grill out on the deck, and they were comfortable, and they forgot all about God and his house. And God's like, wait a minute. What happened to I'm the most important thing to you. Where did that go? Oh, well, yeah, we still love you and all, but we're just pretty comfortable where we are. And he's like, that's not the point. Get out there and do what you said you were going to do. Your passion, the fact that you've given up on my temple, it's not that I need it, but it is a reflection of your passion for me. And it's showing the whole world that you really don't even care about your God. You've, whatever. People have been walking by this half-done construction site for 15 years. Well, what's that? They walked away from that. They're not even building that anymore.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty sad. So
520. That would have been 18 years because it was 538.
18 years.
But and you look at that and you think, well, you think negative of them, but it's a reflection of us. I mean, they spent 70 years there in captivity for God to wake them up. And here it's, a few years after they got out of captivity, they forgot all about it. They're just going back to doing their thing. And, and we're the same way. God really showed me some things and helped me with some things. And, 2 weeks later, we're doing back exactly what we were doing before.
And this is a theme of mankind. And specifically in scripture, it is a theme of followers of God. When they first took the promised land, they come in and then some are like, no, we don't need to do that. We'll just stay where we are. There was another illustration I had in my head, and just
coming out of Egypt.
Yeah.
There are 400 years of slaves in Egypt. They no more than get out of there and they're wandering on the desert. And boy, I wish we were slaves again where we had free food.
Oh yeah.
It's like, free food? You were slaves. What do you mean free food?
Yeah. Moses went up on the mountain for a month, and within that month they were already back to worshiping the idols of Egypt. It didn't take them long to forget and just want to be comfortable again. And that was the problem with those tribes that didn't want to cross over. They're like, well, this land looks good. This is good enough.
Yeah.
We don't want. We don't. That's
I'll rock the
that
boat.
looks like effort, and this is fine. We'll just stay here. And they literally wouldn't even walk into the promises that were given to them.
Mhm.
And here again is a church that, oh yeah, woohoo, let's get. Oh, well, that couch looks comfy, and then they were done.
Yep.
It's like, wow. So again, even with the people of God, this is the pattern over and over and over. And you're right. The church says, well, that's not us. And it's like, it's exactly us.
Mhm.
It is absolutely exactly us and the country club church.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It is. It's uncomfortable. It's easy to look at somebody else and see it, but it's there.
Yep. All right. There's some more complicated names for you to read starting at
All
verse 3,
right.
I think, right?
At that time, Tatnai, the governor of the
Who?
province, Tatnai,
Tat and you?
yeah,
Tat and I. All right.
he had a tat in his eye. It's Tatnai, the governor of the province beyond the river, and Shethar-Bozenai and their colleagues came to them and spoke to them thus: Who issued you a decree to rebuild this temple and to finish this structure? And we told them accordingly what the names of the men who were reconstructing this building. But the eye of their God was on the elders of the Jews, and they did not stop them until a report could come to Darius, and then a written reply be returned concerning it.
So what's happening there?
Same thing that happened before. They came up and said, "Hey, what are you doing?"
They start
Can't be doing
rebuilding it.
this.
They start rebuilding it. People come along and say, what are you doing? And they're like, we're rebuilding the temple. And now they're sending reports back to the king
Mhm.
to see if they can't stop this crazy thing.
Yeah, because there's a new king, so they said, "Okay, well, we're going to start again."
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
right there.
Angie says, when we are free of our carnal nature and have our new bodies, will we still have those shortcomings, you think? Gary.
I think that we have very little understanding of what that's gonna be like.
Mhm.
We live in this plane, in this meat suit where you can't separate the two, spiritually. I can't fathom what it's going to be like to be completely out of that in the spiritual realm, in the presence of Christ. I really do think that we're going to be completely changed in nature. So I don't think so, but that's something we're not giving a ton of detail on.
Right. And then I think that's a really honest answer. She nails it in her question when she says carnal,
Mhm.
because those responses are carnal. That is the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak saying. That's us following the path of least resistance. That's our flesh.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that is. And what you said, we don't really know, but I agree with you that we probably won't have to deal with that because we won't have to deal with those carnal desires of our flesh. Our flesh won't be fighting against us. That part of us will be dead, will be gone, and we will have spiritual bodies instead. And so those kind of things, I don't think will have the power that they did here.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that makes biblical sense to me. So,
yeah.
All right. Angie, good question. Say hi to what's his name? What's that guy she hangs out with? Merk, Lurk,
Lurk.
Dirk,
I think it's
Dirk.
Lurk.
It's Dirk. We love Dirk.
Hi, Dirk.
He doesn't love us right now after we made fun of his name.
He still loves us.
Does he?
Yeah, he's tough like that.
I love him. He's handsome.
Well, let's not get carried away.
All right.
Anyway,
All right.
he says Tatnai is the governor of the province beyond the river, and he uses that term governor a little bit later. But they actually had satraps was the name of the person that ran, and
Those
you see
traps
that
catch you when you sit down.
Yeah, you see that in Daniel.
It's
the
not.
way that
Explain to them what that is, because I think I threw them
well, it's
off.
like a
They're
governor.
actually picturing a chair with a mousetrap.
It's
on it
like
right
a
now.
governor, but that was the title.
Right. They were a leader. It was a position of authority.
Yeah, but this term governor, some of the problems with Ezra is it's written in Aramaic largely, but there's a lot of Hebrew stuff, but there's a lot of loan words from Assyrian and stuff in there too, because they just had come back from Babylon, so
Right.
And there's this word, they're not 100% sure. He must have been some sort of official, but he wasn't like the governor of the province, because that was Ashtani was the satrap at that time. We have that from the records. So when he says governor, he says it a few times in here, and it's not. He's just some sort of official. It's not exactly clear.
And it's interesting because a lot of people say, well, why is it important that they have all these names and their position and where they were and how long it took? And it just get to the point. But the cool thing is archaeology discovers all of these various things. Every day they're finding new stuff that is proving that every single thing that it says here, that this guy was real.
Mm-hmm.
His name's carved on a stone, and it was this time, and it was in this place, and it mentions the Jews and all, and it's like, holy cow, everything the Bible just said, right down to the names and stations of these people in power, is 100% accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And it proves that the Bible is historically accurate.
Yeah.
This isn't made up.
No, there's a lot of things in the Bible that they haven't found records of
Right.
yet. So they say, well, that didn't happen because we don't have records of it yet. It's very interesting. The default isn't, well, we didn't find that yet. It's, well, it didn't happen.
Right.
But because so much of the Bible is still in existence after all this time, it's an exceptional document because, you know, there's just no other documents of this age with so much manuscript evidence,
Right.
and so much depth and so much information. So it's not a surprise that there's a lot of things in it that we haven't found records of yet. I mean,
Right.
you know, there's a lot of dirt to dig out there yet.
Right. Right.
But it's rich and it's accurate, and it's a good history. Slowly but surely they're learning that, and slowly they're admitting that. So,
All right.
verse 6. This is the copy of the letter which Tattenai, the governor of the province beyond the river, and Shethar-Bozani and his colleagues, the officials who were beyond the river.
The river is the Euphrates
Yes.
River, by the way. Okay.
Yep. Sent to Darius the king. Yeah, some of them will say in the Trans-Euphrates or something. Some interpretations. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think of. Anyway, verse 7. They sent a report to him in which it was written thus: to Darius the king, all peace. Let it be known to the king that we have gone to the province of Judah, to the house of the great God, which is being built with huge stones, and beams are being laid in the walls. And this work is going on with great care, and is succeeding in their hands. Then we asked those elders and said to them thus: who issued you a decree to rebuild this temple and to finish this structure?
So let's pause right there for just a second.
Okay.
So these people, again, have written a letter to Darius to tell him what's going on and saying, seriously, do they have a building permit? Right?
Yep.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Because if they don't, we're shutting them down. That's
Yep.
what they want.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So where's your building permit? So they sent in to the colony to see if they had a permit. In verse 10, we also asked them their names so as to inform you, and that we might write down the names of the men who are at their head. Like, I'm taking your name and I'm getting it to the teacher.
So we can come back to your house later and drag you out in the street and beat you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'll stop you.
So the whole time this letter is being sent out, waiting for the return, those guys, and they, you know, it wasn't an email. Those guys whose names they took had to be sitting there wondering, it's like, are they going to come lift my head off? Or
That's
what?
right. That's
I mean,
exactly right.
Yeah. Thus they answered us, saying, we are of the servants of the God of heaven and earth, and are rebuilding the temple that was built many years ago, which a great king of Israel built and finished.
What great king was that?
Solomon.
That was Solomon's temple. It was
Yep.
destroyed. Yes.
But because our fathers had provoked the God of heaven to wrath, he gave them into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the Chaldean, who destroyed this temple and deported the people to Babylon. However, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Babylon, King Cyrus issued a decree to rebuild the house of this house of God. Also the gold and silver utensils of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem and brought to the temple of Babylon. These King Cyrus took from the temple of Babylon, and they were given to one whose name was Sheshbazzar, whom he had appointed governor. He said to him, take these utensils, go and deposit them in the temple in Jerusalem, and let the house of God be rebuilt in its place. Then that Sheshbazzar came and laid the foundations of the house of God in Jerusalem. And from then until now, it's been under construction, and it is not yet completed.
Okay, let's pause there for a second because I think it's interesting that there's some crossover happening here.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they rebuild the temple, but all of the utensils that go in the temple are still intact, and they had been taken by Nebuchadnezzar.
Mm-hmm.
He had them. and we know he did because there's the story of the I think it's the writing on the wall story, isn't it?
Yeah, with his
The finger of God writing on the wall, where they go into the they go into the cellars of the palace, and they bring out all of these Jewish articles from the temple, and they use them for a big party, and they're drinking wine out of them and everything. Remember that story?
Yep.
Yeah, and kind of just to mock the Jews. So those are the very same articles that were the temple articles that they have now recovered. They've been given back for them to use to put back in the temple.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of crossover there. I mean, go read it. That was in chapter 5. And the king who comes along after that Belshazzar, he was the last king, Babylonian king in Babylon, and that's when it fell.
Right.
And the next king that Daniel deals with is one Darius. He's the one who kind of got backed into a corner and had to throw Daniel in the lion's den and didn't really want to do it. And
no, he was friends with him. Yeah.
Daniel came out of it. Same Darius we see here.
See, it's nice.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, again, because I think a lot of people think these are completely separate stories, isolated unto themselves, but all of this is intermingled and woven together that spills over. There's other people alive at these same times in other places. And, we talk about Nehemiah and all those things who come, he's kind of watching all this at a distance as well right now.
Yeah.
So he's alive and connected and informed on this stuff. He's just not mentioned. And he steps up and does his thing later. So yeah.
And the way this is written is it's almost like this is the letter that Tat and I wrote, but it's the way it's written.
You and Tat?
Yeah.
I'm just going to do that.
I think he's he must be giving an exact rendering of what the Jews said, because it wouldn't be normal for him as a Persian official to say that because of our fathers had provoked the God of heaven, he gave them into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, that God gave them into Nebuchadnezzar's hand, and God allowed the temple to be destroyed. That would have been normal from a secular point of view to say, well, Nebi came and took it, but so I'm thinking that if they thought by putting the words in that way, they would say that make the Jews paint a picture of the Jews where they looked a little more, maybe a little less malleable to the rulers.
Right. All right. We are on verse 17.
Yes.
Let's go.
Now, if it pleases the king, let a search be conducted in the king's treasure house, which is there in Babylon. If it be that a decree was issued by King Cyrus to rebuild this house of God at Jerusalem.
So they're saying, somebody go to the file room and see if there actually is a permit. Somebody said Darius issued it. Go see if that, or Cyrus did. Go see if it's actually in there in the files 20 years ago or so, right?
Yep. Let's see if we can find it.
Let the king send us his decision in this matter. That takes us up to chapter 6.
Chapter 6.
Look at us. Woot, woot, Gary.
Scooting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Verse 6. Go ahead, take it.
Then King Darius issued a decree, and search was made in the archives where the treasure were stored in Babylon. In Ecbatana in the fortress, which is in the province of Media, a scroll was found, and there was written on it as follows: Memorandum.
Okay, so
Memorandum.
they found some documents.
Mm-hmm.
They found some.
Yep.
Just like those people who were rebuilding the temple said when those guys came up and said, you couldn't build it. They're like, yes, we can. We were told we could a long time ago, and we're just finally getting around to it seriously. Mm-hmm. And so they've actually discovered the document, which reads as...
Interesting little side note.
Oh, man, I was right there. Oh, then you took us right off the edge there, Gary.
Yeah, Darius look in Babylon, and in Ecbatana in Media, he found it. And it seems, why would you look in Babylon? Because now they took Babylon, so wouldn't it be stored? Well, according to Xenophon, the Greek historian, Darius spent his winters in Babylon because he liked the climate there. He spent the spring in Susa, but he spent his summers in Ecbatana. So,
and Ecbatana, according to the maps, was between Baghdad and Tehran. Mm-hmm. So that's where that scroll was found, in that office, in that file cabinet.
Yep. And Babylon would have been down there just south of Baghdad.
Yep. Yep. So that kind of gives you a picture of where these things are taking place geographically.
Yep.
Okay.
And Susa, Daniel talks about Susa too as well. So
Yeah. Susa means what in Hebrew, Gary?
I don't know.
Come on.
Tell me.
I tell
you're
you all
Hebrew
the time.
Scholar.
Horse.
See, there you go. I can't speak Arabic.
Or in your case, stallion. Your wife just rolled her eyes.
Yeah.
I could hear that eye roll without looking. All right. Moving on then.
Oh. Lord.
Verse 3. In the first year of King Cyrus the king issued a decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem. Let the temple, the place where sacrifices are offered, be rebuilt, and let its foundations be retained, its height being 60 cubits and its width 60 cubits, with 3 layers of huge stones and 1 layer of timbers, and let the cost be paid from the royal treasury.
So it's 90 feet by 90 feet, basically, is what it is.
Yeah, which is not at all the correct dimensions of the original temple.
No, it's much smaller.
Yeah, and I don't know that they actually even necessarily followed his measurements exactly, but
No.
But he, kings are.
He's throwing him a bone.
Yeah.
Right? He said, go ahead and build something.
Okay, here's your permit, but you got to build it the way I want it.
Yeah, build it big enough that you could you could put some stuff in there.
Yeah. Well, he's probably thinking, we don't want some grand edifice. We just want go ahead and build it.
Yeah, it's a garden shed compared to the Solomon's temple.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But it even says though, let the royal treasury pay for it. So also let the gold and silver utensils of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took from the temple in Jerusalem and brought to Babylon, be returned and brought to their places in the temple in Jerusalem, and you shall put them in the house of God. Now, therefore, Tatnai, the governor of the province beyond the river, Shethar-Bozenai, and your colleagues, the officials of the provinces beyond the river, keep away from there. Leave this work on the house of God alone.
Okay, so the decree says they can build it, and everybody else has to leave them alone so they can.
Yep.
Nice. Okay.
Yep. And this is interesting that he goes on to say, not only leave it alone, let the governors of the Jews and the elders of the Jews rebuild the house of God on its site.
Yeah.
Specifically where it
was.
Not just rebuild it. And that's an important point to the Jews, especially. That's an important point to the Jews today, is that they don't have a temple because they don't have access to what they believe is the site, this same site. So they won't build a temple.
Right.
Because it's got to be on that same site.
Right. Well, historically, up to this point, it has been an actual stone temple. The tabernacle was in Shiloh for 360, 370 years prior to moving to Jerusalem. But once they moved to Jerusalem, they actually built an actual permanent stone temple. And that is the place where it has always been.
Right.
And that is a holy site, a holy ground. That's where the Ark of the Covenant rested, in that temple. So to the Jewish people, that is absolutely, without a doubt, their holiest place on the planet.
Yeah.
Is that ground.
And they believe that that's where the Dome of the Rock is, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is now, and that's why they can't have that site, so they won't build the temple until they can have that site, or until they find some conclusive evidence that that's not the site.
Correct. So,
verse 8.
Go ahead, Gary. You are doing great.
Great. Moreover, I issue a decree concerning what you are to do for these elders of Judah in the rebuilding of this house of God. The full cost is to be paid these people from the royal treasury out of the taxes of the provinces beyond the river, and that without delay. Whatever is needed, both young bulls, rams, and lambs for a burnt offering to God of heaven, and wheat, salt, wine, and anointing oil, as the priests in Jerusalem request, it is to be given to them daily without fail.
Pause. What's happening here? What does this decree say?
He's not only saying, let him build it. He's saying, let him build it and pay for it and finance its ongoing operations.
Who's financing the ongoing operations?
The governor, the taxes that are raised from that Trans-Euphrates area. The people beyond the river have to pay for it.
The taxpayers of this region are paying to build this church and provide anything they need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
which I think about what we do now. We build these great temples called sports arenas,
Yeah.
paid for
By the taxpayers.
and it provides everything for them to build it and complete it and put it up and all that stuff, and that becomes our place of worship. I'm just pointing out a parallel. That's all. I mean, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Okay.
That's not far from accurate right there, I'd have
Okay.
to say. In history, secular history, we see that Darius did this not just for the Jews, though. He did this for places in Egypt. He did it in Greece. So it's not like he was suddenly a convert to Judaism. Yeah, they're in the God of your nation back then was kind of, it's almost like their mascot. We're going to war, our God's here and stuff. Well, kings that were more moderate, they would try to placate the gods of those other nations and not take a chance, So that's what he's doing here. He's not necessarily, and the Persian kings were famously wealthy beyond all reason. So for him to allow those taxes to go to the temple isn't that big a deal to him. Actually, they were Zoroastrians, is what those Persian kings really were. Ahura Mazda was their main god, but they didn't believe in just one.
Right. They were pantheistic, but the fact that they were so wealthy, for them to build a 90-foot by 90-foot temple, it's like Jeff Bezos saying, "Fine, I'll build your garage.
Yeah,
I'll pay for it." I was like, "Ooh, don't break yourself."
Yeah, here, let me get to it.
Well, that's all the king is. And he goes, "Fine, we'll do this," but it's like, 90-foot by 90-foot square stones. Come on, that's going to cost me $1,380. I mean, nothing.
And they're going to build it themselves,
and they're going to do the work. So labor's cut off there, so that's nice. And I give them some free bread and stuff, every year, keep them happy, and they're good. Yeah,
I mean, that for the price of one, placating their God, and from his perspective, and two, keeping them quiet.
Right.
That's easy.
And then everything's good. They're happy. The land is happy, and then I can go back to my couch watching Netflix.
Yeah.
And everything's kosher.
Yeah. Yeah. To quote the Roman phrase, bread and circus.
Bread and circuses. Yeah. It keeps people happy.
Yeah.
Boy, because that's not what's happening every day in
bread and
America.
Circuses.
Is it?
Nope.
No. All right. Okay. I think we left off verse 10.
All righty. Verse 10. As soon as I find it. That they may offer acceptable sacrifices to the God of heaven and pray for the life of the king and his sons.
No, see, they're going to love me so much that when they go in that temple that I built for them, they're just going to love me and thank God
and
for
pray
me.
for
And
my life.
it's
Like,
gonna-
here,
I'm
I'll
gonna
pay
be-
for your temple. I'll pay for your stuff. You just, I'll prepare.
I'll be their buddy. It's all going to work out.
It's like that way
good.
their God likes me too.
Yeah. We're all friends then. Verse 11.
And I issued a decree that any man who violates this edict, a timber shall be drawn from his house, and he shall be impaled on it. And his house shall be made a refuse heap on account of this. Yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're going to be crucified on a beam from your own house.
Persian impalement is actually a little tamer than what comes later with Vlad the Impaler.
Is that the one where they greased up the pole and?
Yeah, well, the Persians
Oh,
would sharpen the pole and they'd put it in right under your rib cage. And they'd stick it in there just enough so you'd stay on, and then they'd put you up there and just let you kind of sink.
Yeah.
Vlad, he would just find another hole further down and push on it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. He greased up the pole and then set you on it, and then your weight slowly impaled you on the pole.
You lived a lot longer than
and
you
you
did
suffered
it,
and
but-
lived a long time while you were dying. It's nasty.
So to say that it's more humane the way the Persians did it is a bit of a stretch, but yeah, that was his punishment. Was I will impale you if you don't listen.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously he's not a real loving.
Well, and again, his motivations up front sound like, oh, he really cares about the people.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't really at all. He cares about himself, and he just uses the people as tools to get what he wants, to get his accolades and all the stuff. And he just he's a manipulator and a narcissist, probably as much as the next of these kings was.
And it's like the whole, the Pax Romana, the Romans, they had peace over the whole world. It's like, well, it was peace because everyone was afraid to do anything because they'd get crucified.
Right.
I mean, so that's what he's looking for
Right.
is I got peace because you're not going to do anything but listen.
No, they would line the roads leading into particular cities with
Mhm.
crucifixes,
Yeah.
so that when you came into that city, you knew this is definitely a Roman territory, and don't cross us while you're here, or you'll be hanging out
Yeah.
around the road coming into town like the rest of these guys.
Yeah, that's one way to have peace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
So, after all that, verse 12, may the God who has caused his name to dwell there overthrow any king or people who attempts to change it, so as to destroy this house of God in Jerusalem. I, Darius, have issued this decree. Let it be carried out with all diligence.
All right. So there was a decree, and they go forward and build the temple.
Yep.
And that takes us into verse 13.
And I think Darius, part of the reason that he words things the way he does is like, I don't want to hear about this anymore. Let him build the temple. If you come back to me and ask me again now,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Let's put this thing to bed.
Yes. I don't want to hear any more about it. Just, they can build it. Stop coming to me and whining about this.
Mhm.
I've already told you twice.
Yeah.
One more time, and I'm taking your PlayStation.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Something to cry about. That's right. Stop your crying. I'll give you something to cry
That's
about.
exactly what he told him.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't want to hear it.
Okay.
So, verse 13. Then Tattenai, the governor of the province beyond the river, Shethar, Bozani, and their colleagues carried out the decree with all diligence, just as King Darius had sent.
With all diligence. In other words, guys, shut up. Get it done, or you're going to be on a stick.
Yeah. It's like, okay, let's do this. Yep,
Old Sheth Bozani would have been Shesh Kebab, right? If he did that.
Oh, yeah.
What? Well,
Yeah,
okay, go
he
ahead.
would have. And the elders of the Jews were successful in building through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo. And they finished building according to the command of the God of Israel and the decree of Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes, king of Persia. This temple was completed on the 3rd day of the month of Adar. It was the 6th year of the reign of King Darius.
All right.
So that 6th year of the reign of King Darius is 21 years after they started building the temple. So
When did they start?
it was in 438.
Oh, they finished
they started,
in
but-
515,
So
about March of
or no,
515.
not 438. I don't know. And it was about 21 years
Yep.
anyway. That
536 to 520 is my turn.
Yep, that's about right. Yeah,
Oh, temple finished 516.
516. That's pretty. I figured
Okay.
515, so that's pretty close. Yep, that's about right.
20 years.
20. So then, it's done. Got it all done. One interesting thing is he mentions Artaxerxes, and people have looked at that and said that's an anachronism because Artaxerxes was king next. But there must be something that Artaxerxes did because we see he shows up in the next chapter that helped that along. So there's a reference to him there. Verse
16.
And the sons of Israel, the priests, the Levites, the rest of the exiles, celebrated this dedication of the house of God with joy. They offered for the dedication of this temple of God 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 lambs, and a sin offering for all Israel, 12 male goats, corresponding to the number of the tribes of Israel. They appointed the priests to their divisions and the Levites in their orders for the service of God in Jerusalem, as it is written in the book of Moses. And if you turn back to 2 Chronicles chapter 6 and 7, when Solomon dedicated the temple, this offering is peanuts compared to what Solomon did.
Yeah, it says that Solomon's temple involved more than 200 times as many animals as were sacrificed here.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, literally, blood had to run from the temple on even at Passover when people would come and to sacrifice in the temple. I mean, Jews from all over. I mean, it must have been a steady stream of people filing in, sacrifice all day, sun up to sundown, day after day.
Yeah.
Blood, just, oh my gosh. Wow, was it dripping into the streets as it ran down the hill from the temple? I mean, it's right. And then as many as they sacrificed here seems like a lot. And then Solomon, thousands and thousands of animals. It's just
hard to
They had a
grasp.
drainage system.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Mhm.
You know, and again, it's and the focus is just it's on the blood, and it seems gory, but it's the blood that saves us, the sacrifice and the blood of our atoning
Mhm.
sacrifice and offering to cover our sin, Jesus and his blood. So all of this again is simply a picture of Christ.
Yeah.
And the blood he sheds to restore and reconcile that relationship that's broken.
Yep. Once for all to make an end of sacrifice.
Yep. So that this never has to happen again.
Yep.
All right. That was fun.
Yeah. 19. The exiles observed the Passover on the 14th of the first month. It's just a little note there. It doesn't say the community, the Jews, it says specifically the exiles, singling out the fact that these are the people that came back, not the people that stayed behind.
Right.
Those people that were no longer pure or clean that stayed behind. It's the exiles.
Yes. It's sort of like them saying we're a very exclusive club
Mhm.
and we're doing this thing and it's just us.
And it's
Not
interesting
you.
to see, though, that the exiles were sent off to Babylon and were careful to maintain their Jewish heritage, but the people that stayed in their homeland didn't.
Didn't.
No, they became diluted. They became diluted spiritually, and they became diluted in their heritage and their bloodline by
Right.
marrying into the Gentiles.
Right. Which for the Jews,
Which again, you were saying creates who?
well, the Samaritans.
The Samaritans.
Yeah. Historically, for the Jews, it's not a race issue. You know,
No.
they don't. It's not that, oh, hey, we're better than you. It's a spiritual issue that
Mm-hmm.
not intermarrying, not being diluted is it's spiritual. You know, not accepting their gods and stuff. But we see that rear its head again later on in Ezra too.
Right. They've become too much part of the world.
Yeah. Well, all those syncretism is the term for it, where you take a little bit of that Canaanite religion and mix it in with our religion.
Yep.
And that's what the Samaritans were doing.
Right.
And that's why they rejected that.
Right. They said, well, we're Jewish, but we don't do anything Jewish. We don't practice any Jewish stuff, but we're Jewish. And it's kind of like that. You know, like people, well, nah, I won't even.
Well, that's the term for the Unitarian coexisting is syncretism. It's taking parts of your religion and mixing it in with mine and stuff. And
Mhm.
you're not becoming more inclusive. What you're doing is you're watering down your religion.
Right. You're not, yeah. Right. Suddenly there's no foundation at all.
Mhm.
And you're left awash, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't, it's just muddy water. So, verse 20, for the priests and Levites had purified themselves together. All of them were pure. Then they slaughtered the Passover lamb for all the exiles, both for their brothers and the priests for themselves. The sons of Israel who had returned from exile and all who had separated themselves from the impurity of the nations of the land to join them, to seek the Lord, the God of Israel, ate the Passover. And they observed the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with joy, for the Lord had caused them to rejoice, and had turned the heart of the king of Assyria toward them to encourage them in the work of the house of God, the God of Israel.
All right. So
there were some that
Yeah, he did
separated
specifically.
themselves. Just like when Israel came out of Egypt, there were some of the Egyptians that believed and separated themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know what they called them.
I don't remember. But he does say, specifically that separated themselves and were clean. Then they joined with the exiles and were able to join in.
Yep. And they're celebrating all of these Jewish festivals again, which again, those in exile would have had a hard time doing. So they're just very excited. They get to do these festivals, and there's a temple again. And it's as if they're feeling very very much restored. Like finally, we actually get to be who we are and worship our God the way we, we want to outside of bondage.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good time for them.
Yeah, to actually celebrate the Passover there. I mean, It's a big deal.
All right, that takes us into chapter
7. We should make a long pause. Just because between chapter 6 and 7, there's about a 57-year pause. So,
all right. All right.
A representative pause.
57 years after the events of chapter 6.
Now, after these things, in the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, there went up Ezra, son of Seraiah, son of Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Shallum, son of Zadok, son of Ahitub, son of Amariah, son of Azariah, son of Meraioth, son of Zerahiah, son of Uzai, son of Bukai, son of Abishua, son of Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, of the chief priests.
Wow.
There's a reason for that little lineage, and then it
says this Ezra came up from Babylon. So this is the lineage of who again?
This is Ezra.
Ezra.
Yeah.
Who the book is about. So Ezra goes all the way. He is in the bloodline of
Aaron,
the very first high priest.
Yeah, and
right?
that's important because Ezra doesn't come as a government official. I mean, he does have a place in the government there, but he comes in a religious nature. He comes as a priest,
right,
and does the things that he does. And so for them to establish his priestly lineage is important right from the get-go.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So basically they're saying he has credentials.
Yeah.
He's not just a nobody. He's somebody in a line of somebodies.
Yeah.
As far as guys who work for God.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, here we are. Verse 6 again. This Ezra came up from Babylon. He was a teacher well versed in the law of Moses, which the Lord, the God of Israel, had given. And we know all about that.
Mm-hmm.
The king had granted him everything he asked for the hand of the Lord, his God, was on him. So he's in good with the king.
Yep. In a lot of respects, Ezra as a figure reminds me of Joseph.
Yeah, he's got a reputation with the people, but he's also got a reputation with the king.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the king's ear.
And just a little parenthetical, in like 465 BC, this is where like 458 now, with Artaxerxes, there was a king called Xerxes, a Persian king, who had dealings with Jews in Persia. By name like Mordecai and Esther.
Yeah.
This is now we've kind of jumped that whole story of Esther. We're just after that, 7 years or so after that now. So for perspective,
right.
Yeah.
So this is a time when, again, they rebuild this temple, and that story of Esther falls in this space, right?
Yep.
So during that time, there's another story of them trying to get rid of the Jews.
Yeah.
So they try to build this temple. They try to get rid of the Jews. They go to the king twice on 2 different occasions to try to end this thing. In between this chapter 6 and 7 is that story of Haman trying to get rid of the Jews again, and rescued by the king. And I just think, and again, just how many times God's people are tried to get, the devil wants to wipe out God's people, but in the end, they're always saved by our King Jesus, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So yeah, now we're in with Artaxerxes, the one who succeeded that king. So, and then we see in verse 7, some of the sons of Israel and some of the priests, the Levites, the singers, the gatekeepers, and the temple servants went up to Jerusalem in the 7th year of King Artaxerxes. So yeah, Ezra didn't come by himself. he comes and he brings all these people. And it's interesting to me that, they had that 70-year captivity. And then we had like 21 years when they were building the temple. Now we had another like 57 years. So we're like 150 years later. In Persia, there's still people who identify themselves as the temple servants. Even though they haven't had a temple for 150 years.
Well, and this list,
that they've been at,
right? And this list of people, the priests, the Levites, the singers, the gatekeepers, the temple servants, that same list is used in the beginning.
Mhm.
Remember when they are first released from Babylon and they come back?
Yeah.
And all these people are there, and it lists that same list of people. So all through captivity, those particular groups passed on and remained intact.
Yeah.
So that hoping one day when they got back, they would have a temple and be able to reinstitute these duties of their kids or their grandkids, and there would still be these groups to do these things. These are specific groups of people and occupations for the temple.
Mhm. And this
So-
is a little bit of a spoiler, but we're going to find that the people who are in Jerusalem start to intermarry with the people around them.
Mhm.
And it strikes me that they can sit in captivity for 150 years and maintain their Jewishness, but when they get home for 50, they lose it. You look around the world and you see the church flourishing under persecution, but the church in America is stunted and weak. It's the same thing as human nature. When they were in captivity, they were thriving in their religious nature, but when they get back home, they can't hang on to it. I mean, that's the way we are.
I remember hearing a story about in some country in Africa how the people were praying that the persecution would continue because so many people come to the Lord during the persecution. But when everything's hunky-dory.
And we're so just freaked out by the concept of persecution. For us, I mean, I'm persecuted if somebody doesn't want me to pray over my meal. I mean, we just don't have any clue. I mean,
Right. I know. It's true.
Yeah.
Yep. History is cyclical. There's that. I don't exactly know how it goes, but there's that whole cycle where there's war, and then those men of war create a time of peace, and then that time of peace creates prosperity and comfort, and then that prosperity and comfort creates
weak leaders
and people who can't handle trouble.
Yeah.
And then that leads to another war, which brings it all right back in a circle. And that's just the circle of history that we just go through again and again and again. And we're in that time where none of that younger generation has ever really experienced hardship.
No,
they've never gone to war. They've never been a part of war.
We work hard to shelter them from that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of that, they've become accustomed to nothing but comfort in anything they want.
Mm-hmm. And that's an illusion. That's a bubble.
Yeah.
That doesn't last.
And that prosperity and that comfort was brought to them, whether they like to admit it or not, by men of war.
Mm-hmm.
That's what brought that for them.
Yep.
And that's going to bring them right back to it, because they're going to squander it, and it's going to lead to another war.
Yeah. And the world is different now than it's ever been. It's like Rome had the world in a stranglehold, and they still fell on their face.
And again, that's a lot of people debate a lot of things, and so that's probably one of them.
But look for that cycle, because it's there.
Yeah. Yep. All right.
Where did we leave off?
Any final questions? We left off verse 11, didn't we?
11. Okay.
I think so. Oh, no.
No.
Remember Jerusalem.
8.
8.
Okay.
7, 8.
7, 8.
7, 8.
7, 8, 9.
I'm gonna write that down somewhere. What?
And then you'll forget where
That's
you are.
why 6 was afraid of 7.
Yeah, because 7, 8,
7, 8,
9.
9.
Facts.
Share it with your friends. Okay.
But you're here. You already know it.
Ezra, you're the only friend I have. Ezra
7, 8.
8. Okay.
You're doing better than me. I don't have any friends.
Oh, thank you.
Well, you're
I guess I'm demoted.
You're more than that.
We're left in the cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Okay. We will pick up next week, Saturday. Guess who's preaching?
I don't know.
Saturday.
Some guy.
Saturday.
Saturday.
Saturday. Gary's preaching.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. At
Woo.
least that's what we're going to tell him. We may just, throw a party and then, because, when the cat's away. But we'll see.
I will be in town.
Oh,
And you
never
don't even
mind.
know,
I'm
I
preaching.
might, depending on the wedding and and how long it is and all that sort of stuff. Who knows? Maybe I'll just tell the party we're just moving the wedding party to church,
There you go.
and then we'll come and all watch it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll throw rice at you or birdseed or whatever they use now. I don't know.
I don't know.
Small stones, darts,
Large stones.
what? I don't know.
Sure.
Fish. Throw fish at you. Smack. That'd be fun.
Preferably,
Be like a
3-day
meat
old
market.
fish.
We're over our time. We should really close.
We should.
Okay. What are you looking at me for?
I don't know.
All right.
I'm just waiting to see,
All right.
All right,
Let's get
let's
on
pray.
with it.
Let's
Okay.
pray.
Okay.
God bless your people tonight as we get ready to go home and go about the things that we do every day. God, just help us not to stick you back in that box. Help us to carry you with us consciously. I know you walk with us, God. We walk in your hand, but to our perspective, we see what's in front of us. God, help us to see you, to see your hand, to see your presence, and to live with you and walk with you and just show people that we're yours, God. Just help us to glorify you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
You're right.
All right. Let's close with
Here, thanks for that.
3, 2, 1.
Good night.
Good night.
Where were you on that, Joe?